What's going on, friends? This is Neil Adler with another episode of Syracuse Central on the Fan Arch Network. It is. Hold on, look at my clock. It's Thursday. I don't have a clock. I don't even wear a watch. I just wear this little thingy that makes me think of my son. He picked it out. I know it's cheesy. Anyway, this is Syracuse Central. We talk about Syracuse football, basketball, recruiting. And if you're so inclined, hit that subscribe button and also drop me comments every single time about what you like and especially what you don't like. So we're going to stick with Syracuse basketball. I should probably get into some Syracuse football on Friday since there is a game on Saturday, but I'm kind of feeling Syracuse basketball more these days. No disrespect to Fran Brown and his program, but any event, we're going to start out with some recruiting stuff and then get into some Syracuse basketball stuff and then some of your comments, which are always awesome. The first thing is, and I believe I talked about this a couple days ago, although the days do blend together. Four-star big man Asher Elson from New York City, a 2026 top 150 prospect. He announced his college decision on Wednesday, which was the last day of the early signing period. I had reported earlier that it wasn't going to be Syracuse, although I didn't know who it was going to be. For a while I was hearing Maryland and Auburn were kind of in the lead, sort of. But then over the weekend, I was kind of hearing that Xavier maybe had picked up some ground, and all this stuff is fluid, and I'm not saying it's like rumors because I talk to people that know a lot more than I do. But you never know until the final thing happens. But he picked Xavier, and listen, happy for Asher, rooting for him in the Big East. Syracuse had prioritized him for a long time. And he officially visited last month, but it just wasn't in the cards. And we've talked about, ad nauseum at this point on Syracuse Central about the 2026 prep class and kind of where the staff is right now, given they need to win and win now. And so there's stability with the staff. And also, some of these top targets that they've, didn't get. Asher Elson, Deron Rippey, obviously, didn't include Syracuse in his top five earlier in the week. They're real close with the staff. It's not about Syracuse as much as is about the staff in particular. So if Syracuse is winning and there's no issue about Autry and Griffin, all those guys coming back next year, then fine. But right now we don't 100% know. I hope they win. I hope they remain there. But that certainly could factor in. And the other thing is Syracuse, I believe, could bring back 9 to 10 guys. And what I've been told is they're focused on roster retention, or will be focused on roster retention in the portal. So, the high school class was always going to be small. And again, Asher, he said some nice things to 24/7 Sports, to Sean London, one of the national analysts there. He said, he said this was the hardest decision of my life in terms of making this decision to go with Xavier. And then his quote from Syracuse was, Syracuse is the home team. I love Syracuse. I love Coach Red Autry. I love those guys over there. So again, and it's the same thing with Deron Rippey not putting Syracuse in his top five, and Jordan Smith Jr., if he ultimately doesn't pick Syracuse, he's got them in his top six. It's not, they love this staff, whether it's, again, Autry, Griff, Brennan Strawn, et cetera, Alex Klein, Dan Engelstad obviously recruits certain guys as well. It's not that they don't have good relationships with these prospects. It's that we don't 100%, like if Syracuse tanks, it could be a new staff next year. And granted, if a new staff came in, they could recruit their own guys too. And the late signing, or the traditional signing period for high school seniors, is next April. So we got plenty of time. Wishing Asher well. But one thing I did want to note, and I've talked about this a little bit because I have gotten some intel, quote unquote. What's a potential for Syracuse in terms of 2026 at the high school level? Again, putting aside roster retention in the portal, is 2027 guys that could reclass. And I've been told more than once that one guy they're looking at, or at least we're looking at in the last couple months, and then this is all fluid, and I'll try and get updates as much as I can. This guy Clyde Walters is a 4-star wing, small forward. He plays for Overtime Elite in Atlanta. He's from Alabama, and we'll see if he visits. But with these 2027 potential reclass guys into 2026, they might not make their decisions for a few months. So, but there's a couple other guys to keep an eye on that are 2027 prospects who have Syracuse offers and could reclass based on what I've been told, or analysts or other reports. and no decisions that I'm aware of have been made. And I don't know how much of an interest level per se Syracuse has in all these guys, but it's just something to keep in mind. So besides Clyde Walters, who I definitely would keep an eye on if I were you, one is Theo Adema, and he goes to the Cushing Academy in Massachusetts, and he did officially visit Syracuse in September, and Syracuse was also in for him at Cushing, amid the fall recruiting period, starting in early September, and that's when not only can coaches, have guys onto the campus for official or unofficial visits, but they can go out and conduct in-home visits with these guys. They can go to open gyms at their high school programs, and so they've done that with Adema. And he definitely looks like he could be, a priority for Syracuse. And I haven't heard anything definitively if Syracuse is looking at him in 2026, but I have heard and read that he could be a 2026 reclass candidate. Not necessarily whether for Syracuse, I don't know, but it might make sense because he's a big man, and William Kyle III is a senior, if I'm not mistaken, and their other power forward, well, more like big man. Akir Soare is a red shirt sophomore, I believe, and Sheffing Diawara is a true freshman. So, but I would also imagine that Syracuse, one of their priorities in terms of spending in the portal this coming off season, will be the center spot. So how Adema would fit into that, we'll see. But it's something to monitor. A couple other guys that hold offers. Musa Kemasoko, he's a 5-star wing/small forward out of Long Island Lutheran, same high school where Kyan Anthony went, and he was offered by Syracuse last December. And I've, again, kind of heard through the grapevine that maybe he could be a reclass candidate. And then two other guys. One is Anderson Diaz, a 4-star point guard who also plays in Overtime Elite. And he was offered by Syracuse in July. And I know that Alan Griffin was at Overtime Elite's Pro Day this past September. And, Diaz plays there. 2027 big man Caleb Origo, who was Diaz's teammate at the Lawrence Woodmere Academy before they transferred to Overtime Elite because Woodmere closed down at least for this year. So those two guys, as well as Clyde Walters, and then obviously Asher Elson, were 4 guys in Overtime Elite that, maybe Griffin and the staff are looking at. So keep an eye there. And then I talked about this guy, Paul Osarui, a 2027 5-star power forward/center. He plays at CIA Bella Vista in Phoenix. He was offered by Syracuse last fall. I'm not sure how heavy Syracuse is with this guy. He plays at the same school as former targets like Vaughn Carvalho, who's committed to Indiana, and a 2026 4-star wing, and then Miles Sadler, a 2026 5-star point guard. He recently committed to West Virginia. So, Syracuse is definitely trying to develop relationships with that CIA Bella Vista, that program, which is in the EYBL Scholastic. And again, I'm not saying that Syracuse is heavy for any of these guys or that they're necessarily going to reclass, but it's something to monitor in terms of potential 2026 guys. And then we also got to keep in mind Calvin Russell. I believe he's going to play for Syracuse basketball, at least initially, and I believe he's going to enroll early. I don't know if he's going to join the team for the second half of the 2025-26 season. I'm going to try and find that out. But he is expected to sign with Syracuse football during the early period coming up in early December, and we'll see about his basketball plans. And then one other note I came across with Adema, it looks like, and this was from earlier this month, so this could be fluid, but it looks like some of the programs that he doesn't have like an official list or anything right now, but he mentioned in an article with 24/7 Sports that some of the programs he's high on are Syracuse, Auburn, Creighton, and Maryland. I think he's visited all or most of those. So again, I think Adema and Clyde Walters are guys to monitor, whether it's 2027 or into 2026. Something to keep an eye on. All right. So I love this. So free throws. Yeah. And the free throw situation isn't great. They were 19 of 33 on Tuesday night against Monmouth in that 5-point win. They missed a bunch down the stretch. They were awful in the second half. But then it was interesting because Autry, and I didn't include this on Wednesday just because I was getting into other stuff, but Autry in his post-game presser, he said things like, we're going to get better at that. We have guys I think are capable of making free throws, and we'll get that going. And he focused more of his like gripes or concerns about the 5-point win over Monmouth, about energy and inconsistent defensive efforts and all that, and just not like putting it all together like they have. Well, let's face it, even in the first 3 games, they weren't necessarily always like on all the time on both ends of the floor, but their defensive intensity has been good. And I get that, but I did feel like Red was kind of kind of like, I don't want to say shying away from it, but like, I don't know. Again, he focused more of his comments about, their defensive energy, their intensity, and it being kind of up and down. But, dude, they're 19 of 33. They could have lost that game. They're shooting 61% for the year. And then, like, look at some of these numbers. Donnie was, what, 12 of 14 against Monmouth. If he didn't do that, they might have lost. But like, look at some of these other guys, and like, usually you tend to associate guards and wings as having better free throw shooting than necessarily like power forwards and centers. Although again, Donnie's been pretty solid. He's at 78% for the year. Kyan Anthony 47%. Nate George 67%. Nate Kings 0 of 2 for the year. Bryce Seffer 0 of 2 for the year. JJ Starling in his first real game 2 of 5. Luke Fennell, the freshman combo guard from Australia, is 3 of 3. Tyler Betsy, who missed the Monmouth game, 4 of 6 for the year. Sadiq White Jr., 2 of 2. My point is like, again, with Houston and Kansas and another team in the Players Era Festival, and then also Tennessee, that 4-game stretch, and then you've got some winnable games in the non-conference, and then you've got the ACC competition coming up. Like, they need to hit their free throws, or they're going to lose to these better teams. Like, when it's crunch time, and if it's close games, they're going to lose, and unless of course the other teams aren't shooting good free throws. But like, my point is, like, who is Red going to have like in there at the end when other teams are going to obviously be in foul situations? Who's going to have the ball in their hands? Like, I know Bryce Seffer is like a good defensive player, and I'm not like crapping on him because everyone else sucked at free throws other than Donnie too. But like, why is he, why was he getting the ball that late? In terms of, he hadn't shot a free throw all season. And you're going to have him shoot 2 free throws, in the last 2 seconds when you're trying to ice the game. I didn't understand that. So like, who's the ball going to be in their hands? Nate George, he's their floor general. JJ Starling's not a good free throw shooter. Cayenne, he's been playing great, but 47%, like, and he has the second most attempts. Look at this. Donnie Freeman has 36 attempts. The next highest is Cayenne at 17. And so for Syracuse, if their 3-point shooting isn't working, they're going to get points being in the paint, getting to the line, out in transition off forced, turnovers, etc. So they got to clean this up, man. Like, I thought it was a little odd, and you drop me comments, tell me I'm a moron. It felt like Autry was like kind of deflecting that question, that talking point. And I know Syracuse historically has struggled sometimes from the free throw line, and they were 70% collectively last year, and they need to be higher than that this year. So I don't know. We'll move on, but I just thought that was kind of odd. All right, so JJ talked a bit after the game about his first real game. He played 3 minutes in the opener and then missed the next 2 games. And, he played 26 minutes against Monmouth. He had 11 points, 4 of 6 from the field. He made a 3-pointer, 2 of 5 for the line. He struggled there just like everyone else, but he was pretty hard on himself. He said, he said he can do better to help the team, not even just offensively. And I agree. Like, I don't think he's a great defensive player. I think there are certain guys on the team that are better defensive players, at least initially right now, than others. But again, he, that was his first full game, so to speak. So I don't want to like harp on it too much, but he definitely, he felt like he could give a better effort. And Autry said he was not worried about it. He's going to get better. He's going to get more into rhythm. And JJ was talking about, there was some rust there and all that stuff. And look, that's all fine. And like, I didn't think he was awful. He was 4 of 6 and he made a 3. But he's got this ridiculous hitch in his free. And look, when I sit here and talk about this, like, I don't want to act like I'm on my high horse, because I suck at basketball. Like, my 9-year-old son can kick my butt, other than I'm 6'1" and he's 9 years old. I know the sport, I cover the sport, but I'm not good at it. So I don't want to be like an armchair quarterback or whatever. But like, I don't understand the hitch in JJ's shot. Is it like because of injuries, or just like the mechanics just look off? So, I thought he was harder on himself than he should have been, because I didn't think he was that bad. But he said in terms of the free throws, they just got to lock in, and, with the noise and stuff, just kind of cut everything out. And I think all the players, I was on, Jackson Holzer's pod, Locked on Syracuse, great pod, and he has me on from time to time, and he's a buddy of mine, and we were talking about that, and it's like, Yeah, when you start missing these free throws, it definitely gets in your head some. How can it not? And I'm not saying they need to be like an 80% free throw shooting team. They're not going to be. But they can't be 61 or 57.6% in the Monmouth game, but 61 for the year. That's not going to do it. That'd be like one of the worst ever. I'll have to look that up. That just cannot, it will not work. So, in any event, we're going to move on to some of our viewer comments as usual, because this is just, you all have some really insightful stuff and keep that coming. So, Manner of Speaking writes, free throws matter. And yeah, they do. And isn't that what Brian Axe always says with the hashtag free throws matter? Yep. JR colon 76 says, say all you want, but Monmouth played hard and made some tough shots. They were very physical and gave SU a challenge. I didn't expect SU to beat them by 30 with that kind of play. Yes, 100%. Like, I know the spread, I think, ended up being like 20 or 21, but Monmouth was tight with Seton Hall, and they play physical, and it was also like this perfect storm where, that one guy on their team just like went off, and they held their own on the boards, and they actually had +3 advantage in points off turnovers. And even though Syracuse shot 50% from the field and 41% from three, they were 19 of 33 from the free throw line. So there you go. That's why it was so close. And then Diamond Johnson 140 says, let's go, Cayenne. I still believe in you. Definitely. I mean, yeah, he had an off game, and maybe it's an adjustment for him too after starting the last 2 games and just crushing it. And then he's going back to the bench, and certainly some fans are talking about, oh, should Cayenne start over Jay? Let's just see how the next 2 games play out before we start talking about all that. Like, whatever. But yeah, Cayenne, he's going to be there. He's going to get minutes. He's one of the top guys in terms of minutes, whether he's starting or not, along with the normal starters and Betsy if he's healthy, and Sadiq White, and then Swari gets a little bit of time, and Zephyr gets a little bit of time, and it looks like Aaron Womack might redshirt. DOR is probably going to redshirt, or I don't see him playing a ton. Luke Fennell, we'll see. But they got nice pieces for the future as well. And then my man, Peace Love 5873 writes, Monmouth is better than people think. They gave an undefeated Seton Hall squad a hard time in the last game, leading by 7 at the half. This is exactly the kind of game we needed to tune up before next Monday. At Players Era, yes. JJ had an efficient game. Cayenne looked like a freshman against better competition. Maybe folks can temper their expectations for him going forward. JJ should be starting. He should probably be on the floor mostly with Betsy. Cayenne should be the first man off the bench, but like Coach Boeheim said on Orange Nation yesterday, the rotation should be based on who is playing best each game. I think that's something that Red needs to remember. Sometimes I see him subbing out hot hands, and that slows our momentum. And then Peace Love follows with that. Monmouth with the top 20 team in field goal percentage defense coming in. I think we handled it well enough. Austin made a good point post-game about keeping our energy up. We did pull away a couple times in the second half, but they kept coming back. To your point, it definitely was a step up in competition, and I think a necessary one before heading into next week. Not much to learn from film when you're blowing out cupcakes. Yeah, all great stuff. And I agree with Boeheim. Yeah, I mean, I know you want to have continuity with rotations and all that, but sometimes you got to throw that out the window and go with the hot hand. Absolutely. So if that means, fine, you start JJ, but if he's struggling, or Cayenne comes in and he's hot, or Tyler Betsy comes in and he's hot, play the hot hand. I'm totally all about that. Yeah, and Monmouth, gave them a good run, and they're physical and tough, and it wasn't a good win per se in terms of Syracuse. They had 12 turnovers, and they shot poor, and their from free throw line, and their defensive intensity, or their intensity in general, just kind of up and down. But I think it was a good test for them to pull that out, especially the way it kind of ended too. And now let's see what they're really made of it in Vegas. Let's see. So that's going to do it for today's edition of Syracuse Central on the Fan Arch Network. I am your host, Neil Adler. You're either awesome or moronic, or both host, Neil Adler. But seriously, all kidding aside, this is fun stuff, and I appreciate the comments. I appreciate the feedback, and let's just keep building this out. This is fun. Syracuse basketball, Syracuse football, recruiting. We should talk about we can talk about non-Syracuse stuff here and there, music, food, whatever. I just want this to be a community. I love you all. I really appreciate it. Have a great rest of your Thursday, friends. We'll talk again tomorrow on Friday. Maybe do a little football. We'll see. Take care. Much love.